So today's been a very interesting day in regards to being a Spider-Man fan, with the release of Far From Home a little over a month ago, and the fact that it's coming out here on 4K very, very, very soon. The fact that the movie itself was the very first Sony film to gross 1.1 billion. This movie is the highest grossing Sony movie with 1.1 billion, and Marvel took very little money from that. I was under the impression for the longest time that Marvel was going to take no money whatsoever. But here's the thing. Here's the reality, guys. People loved this movie. People absolutely, positively loved Spider-Man Far From Home. Look at this, 90% on the Rotten Tomato meter from critics, certified fresh, 95% audience score. And this is verified ratings. The 67,000 that you see right there are people who purchased via Fandango. And so those are verified audience scores of people who enjoyed Spider-Man Far From Home. And everyone thought that it was going to be smooth sailing. Everyone thought it was going to be happy, just going to be moving on. D23 over the course of this next weekend, they're going to be announcing the next Spider-Man film, or maybe a new deal with Sony to co-produce films in the future, which seems to be like the best course of action. But today we find out that all that's kind of gone when this article pops up over here on Deadline. Disney-Sony standoff ends, Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige's involvement in Spider-Man. People were mad about this. They were mad about this. And here's what the article had to say just initially, saying there's a lot of webbing here, but it all comes down to money, and it's easy to understand why both sides refuse to give ground. Disney asked that future Spider-Man films be a 50-50 co-financing arrangement between the studios, and that there were discussions that this might extend to other films in the Spider-Man universe. Sony turned that down flat. Sony turned that down flat. Think about that one. Sony turned that down. 50-50 co-financing. Previously, for Spider-Man Far From Home and Spider-Man Homecoming, they paid full financing for it. And they got full funding. They got full money for it. But Marvel wanted its cut. Marvel wanted to come on in and go, look, we will cut you in half. We will do half a business with you. And we'll still be able to have creative control over the character. And this could extend potentially to other films in the Spider-Man universe. Now, a lot of people out there have been saying, no, Sony is right for not doing this. Sony's right for walking away. They own the characters. They want more money. Yeah, they do. I get it. They do. But I'm just gonna use an old adage here for you. A bird in the hand is worth literally two in the bush. Sony is not in good standing in regards to Sony Pictures and Columbia Studios. They haven't for a long time. This $1.1 billion movie is literally a gift from Disney to them. In the end, it's a damn gift, 100%. But anyway, it goes on to say here that sources say that Sony, led by Tom Rothman and Tony Vincent, I can't pronounce that, came back with other configurations, but Disney didn't want to do that. But Sony didn't want to share its biggest franchise. Sure, Disney would be putting up half the funding, but the risk is in how much you're going to make back in profit. Disney wasn't at all interested in continuing the current terms, where Marvel receives in the range of 5% on the first dollar gross. Now, for those of you who are uninitiated on this one, I had to look this up too. First dollar gross, according to Wikipedia, is a practice in filmmaking in which participant receives a percentage of the box office gross and gross box office revenue from a film's first day of release. The participant begins sharing the profits from the first ticket sale, not waiting until the film studio turns a profit. And that does work in Marvel's favor, as the very first day is definitely one that's going to bring in the first weekend, you're going to bring the most amount of money, but this is first day. Now, I'm not too sure if this is, if this is like Thursday night preview night, which is usually pretty good, or if this Friday, but then again, Thursday night preview night traditionally rolls into Friday. So it actually is more money for Marvel right then. And I get why Marvel wants this. Marvel did the work. Sony cut a check and paid for marketing. And we all know Sony's terrible at marketing. I'm not even kidding you. Like, look at this. This is the 4K cover for Far From Home. This is the 4K artwork to be whatever. This is what's floating around right now. This is what they're going to do. Their marketing is pretty terrible. So I'm not too worried about that, to be honest with you. Like, Sony, they got lucky. They're really lucky that the movie itself is quite good. But you might be asking yourself, what exactly was the response to this, right? Well, I mean, a lot of people weren't happy about this. In fact, this was an article today. Spider-Man's threatened to Sony boycott over Marvel Studios deal. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say that I didn't get in on that bandwagon to an extent, because I totally, totally did. And it just reminds me that I need to actually shave, which is terrible. But no, I was mad. Sony did mess up by pulling Spider-Man 100%. And a lot of people made videos. A lot of people were talking about it. And a lot of people were very much on Marvel's side. There were some on Sony's side saying that it's, get rid of, someone said on my video, like, get rid of gay wash Spider-Man. I don't know. People are kind of weird. But anyway, so people were upset. So then the whole thing becomes, well, what is Sony going to say back to this? How is Sony going to try to save face? Because they absolutely positively have to. And this is what they put out on Twitter right before this recording. Much of today's news about Spider-Man has been mischaracterized about recent discussions about Kevin Feige's involvement in the franchise. We are disappointed, but respect Disney's decision to not have him continue as lead producer of our next live-action Spider-Man film. We hope this might change in the future, but we understand that many new responsibilities that Disney has given him, including all their newly added Marvel properties, do not allow time for him to work on the IP they do not own. Kevin is terrific, and we are grateful for his help and guidance and appreciate the path he has helped put us on, which we will continue. So what does that mean? It means that they're trying to shift the conversation away from Disney wanting money. So if the argument is, and this is kind of what it's being presented as, at least what we've been able to read, is that Disney wanted 50%, but they wanted to co-finance for 50%, which actually works out for Sony better because they can take less of a risk. And in Sony's case, the risks, this might actually be better for them to just get the money and then put it towards other properties that could do well. Maybe not Marvel, but this does give Marvel the control that they want if they're not going to outright be able to get back the Spider-Man properties. And that part I get. But here they're trying to say, like, well, I mean, someone pulled Kevin Feige's producer card. Somebody up top, and above Kevin Feige, there's only two people, Alan Horn and Bob Iger. And so something tells me that this was an argument in between Iger and Tom Rothman, and that Rothman wanted to make it work and Iger is not wanting to make it work. And I think given all of the money that Iger has spent recently to get all these properties, to get Fox and everything else they're doing, potentially he's wanting that 50% co-financing because he knows that these movies are going to pull in $1 billion going forward. And it's just easy money for both studios. This is what I personally don't get. It's easy money for both studios. So why not just do it? Focus on, look, let Marvel handle it. Let them handle the creative side of it. You make money and you literally do nothing, then sign a check. Now, it probably was going into the other films, and I get that, which we will talk about here in a second. So anyway, the thing you got to remember about Sony, about this deal, is, and this is an article from The Wrap that says, how Dead Spider-Man deal fueled Sony's rebound. What a difference a Disney deal makes. And he's not wrong. Going over here, it says, when the deal was made for back in 2015, Sony was in a tough situation. The leak of thousands of emails and the yet-to-be-released films by North Korean hackers dragged Sony through months' worth of embarrassing headlines, leading to co-chair Amy Pascal leaving the executive suites to become a producer, and she brokered that Spider-Man deal on her way out, putting herself as the producer of the Spider-Man deal, of the Spider-Man franchise within Sony under Pascal Pictures. And except she just recently left to go to Universal for a first deal. And I think that may be kind of why this thing kind of fell apart. Anyway, the box office that year was also poor, falling 23% year over year as domestic grosses fell below $1 billion for the first time in a decade, despite the release of the James Bond film Spectre, which was not great, to be fair. But anyway, that whole situation led to this. Spider-Man is officially joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is in February 9th, 2015. In late 2014, news broke of there being a deal between Sony, or a falling apart deal between Sony and Marvel. And I said at the time, this is going to force it to happen. Fans are going to demand that Spider-Man join the MCU. They're going to make them do it. And I was right. And here it is 4.5 years later, and we've got $1 billion Spider-Man movie. And now Disney wants to get their cut, which I don't blame them on at all. Now, the article goes on to say here, but then Spider-Man Homecoming came, and with it a staggering $880 million global gross for Sony. As per the deal with Marvel, Disney only took 5% of that gross. So they took all of that gross and, okay, anyway, let me go back here because I have to cut that out. Okay, but then Spider-Man Homecoming came, and with it a staggering $880 million global gross for Sony as per the deal with Marvel. Disney only took 5% of that gross and the merchandising revenue. Now, the thing is with that, too, if I recall correctly, Sony, in a dire strait, sold the merchandising stuff rights to Sony or to Spider-Man back to Marvel. So like they got all that back because Sony was hurting pretty bad. Sony had a huge rebound that put it in its annual North American grosses back above the 1 billion mark, and it also extended the contract of Tom Rothman. Now, Tom Rothman is a guy you may have heard of before. This is him right here. This is Tom Rothman back during his 20th Century Fox days, where he looks like a mix between John Oliver and Bob Saget and a Pomeranian or whatever. And this guy is not loved at all. In fact, if you want to know how he failed the X-Men movies, go watch this video on Midnight's Edge talking about Deadpool, the history of the Fox mismanagement, a Trankgate anthology feature. Go check out anything Midnight's Edge has done in regards to covering Deadpool and Tom Rothman, and you will be like, oh my God, this guy shouldn't even be allowed anywhere near a movie studio ever at all. But yet they did. They brought him over to Sony when it all fell through, and as a result of the success of Spider-Man underneath Tom Rothman, they have actually, said that they're going to plan a live action TV show for the Marvel Spider-Man universe, right? They really want to do that because they want to capitalize on Into the Spider-Verse, being best animated picture, but only grossing $375 million on a $90 million budget. And then, of course, they are going to be bringing in Andy Serkis to direct Venom 2 with an Oscar award-winning cinematographer. And that's all well and good. But without the kind of protective umbrella of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they really, I don't think these are going to do as well. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse didn't have anything to do with Marvel, and it didn't do as well as it could have. People thought this is a movie that's going to make a lot of cash. This is a movie that's going to make a lot of money, and it didn't. Yeah, it won Best Oscar, but I mean, outside of Hollywood, no one cares about the Oscars anymore. You don't go to work on Monday morning, sit there with your coffee or your energy drink and go like, so did you watch the Oscars last night? I mean, that best animated feature, that was wild. You don't do that. No one cares about that anymore except inside of Hollywood. And so when it comes down to money, which is what this all boils down to, ultimately we find ourselves in a situation where it's going to be all down to this guy. It really is. Because I think he's the one. And I think this expression perfectly encapsulates Bob Iger today. Because this is a guy that, love him or hate him, is trying to secure his legacy. Spider-Man in the MCU is big business. It's big business. Keeping that storyline going with the characters in the MCU is big business. If they get rid of that, if they lose that, then it's only going to hurt both properties. Marvel can live on. They've got a lot of other people, a lot of other characters at play with the X-Men that just came into the mix. They don't necessarily need Spider-Man. They don't. I mean, and that is true. Marvel kind of holds all the cards here. They want control, and they're willing to pony up the dough to get it. Now, is this a step in the right way or towards getting control of Spider-Man entirely? Yes. Yes, it is. And at the end of the day, by Sony and Tom Rothman walking away from this deal by trying to call Disney's bluff, we know that they cannot manage franchises on their own. They can't. They're great at selling video game consoles. They're terrible at marketing movies and terrible at managing films. So they rebounded with the help of Disney. Now they're going to try to go off on their own and make it work. And even they themselves are like, no, we want to still work with Kevin. Like, you could tell it's kind of like a white flag. Like, no, we still want to make this work. We still want this to be a thing, and it's not going to be a thing. D23 is in a couple days. It's entirely possible that we're going to be in a situation where this whole thing gets swept under the rug and fixed before then. But a lot of analysts on Twitter, a lot of talking heads like myself are saying the otherwise. They're saying it's not going to happen. I'm going to hope against hope. I'm going to be optimistic as hell and hope to God that they're able to figure it out, because it's stupid when we have a shrinking box office in total, right? And only a few movies are making all the money, and those movies are all Disney. And Sony is like, well, yeah, let's gamble on this one because we did well with Venom. You got lucky with Venom. Andy Serkis is not a household name in regards to being a director. You put up on the advertisement, Venom 2, directed by Andy Serkis. People are going to be like, Gollum's directing Venom 2? Okay. All right. You know, it's not a draw. But Sony could take this as the opportunity of trying to put Tom Holland in Venom 2 and team him up as, you know, Spider-Man and Venom against Carnage, which is something that would make a lot of money. And that could be their plan overall. Sony's got to figure this thing out. They got to make the deal work. And we'll have to wait and see what happens. But in the meantime, I do want to hear your thoughts and your opinions.